right, guys, this is a special bonus episode of Conspirinormal. And we have on the line Pamela Furr, who is a talk radio show host here in Nashville on the radio station 99.7 WTN. And it's interesting how I actually kind of got to know Pamela because it's kind of by chance. It's all like synchronicity.
Yeah, you're gonna tell my secret now that I order way too much delivery food.
Well, actually, I haven't actually delivered to you in a while. It's been a few weeks, so.
Yes, that's true. I'm trying to be better.
I gotcha. Yeah. Well, I just delivered to the door, and I guess I put two and two together. I saw the name, and because I'd listened to the show, I'd listened to your show before. I guess that. Well, you're on with I can't remember. Who's the guy?
Mandis.
Dan Mandis. Yeah. He's like the.
Yes.
I guess he's the guy that does the. I guess he does the booking and stuff over there. He's like the main dude, I think, right?
Yeah, no, he's the program director. And then he actually hosts the show. So the show is the Dan Mandis Show from noon to 3. I'm a news anchor.
Yeah.
But I pop in with comments. So I'm on during his show and Phil Valentine's show as a news anchor. But I also fill in as a host from time to time. In fact, I'm filling in tomorrow. But I don't know when this will air. But yeah, I fill in from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard you fill in a few times, and I think on one of those, it was either you were going solo or you were with him. I heard you went to a Bigfoot conference. And
yes, I did.
I actually remembered that from, and when I delivered over there, so I gave you the card, and I was like, I know you're into this, and I gave you that.
Yeah,
and it's just like, probably about quite a few months later. And here we are having you on the show. So,
well, okay. So to tell the truth,
yeah.
So I did go to this Bigfoot conference. It was in Frankfort, Kentucky.
Yeah, I think it's the CryptidCon. I think that's coming back up. I think in Louisville this year.
Yes, that's it. That's exactly what it was. Now, look, I cannot sit here and tell you that I believe in Bigfoot. I don't know. I know that my friend, one of my best friends, had an experience that freaked her out.
Really?
And she has a twin sister. They were both in the car together. They had not been drinking. They were taking back roads through Florida. They had just been on a cruise, and they were taking back roads to get back home just to do some sightseeing or what have you, and they both swear they saw something, and man-like creature, hairy, 7-foot tall kind of thing. And so they called the police, and they called different things, and it wasn't out of the ordinary for somebody to say they'd seen something in that particular area. So she has now started to investigate, different things and trying to hear other people's stories. And so she called and said, don't laugh at me, but will you go with me to a Bigfoot conference? And I said, okay. And so I did. And it was actually kind of fascinating to hear some of the stories. Some of it was just total BS, but then you could figure out which ones were people who actually have seen things, heard things, felt things. Had some people were journalists that just looked for the stories to tell over the years. It was actually pretty fascinating.
Was there anybody that was there that could particularly struck a nerve or struck a chord with you?
Well, I was interested in. I haven't read the books or anything like that, but I did see the movie, The Mothman Prophecy.
Oh,
Are you familiar with that?
I am. We actually had the screenwriter of that movie, Richard Haddam. We've had him on a couple of times on this show.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, so there were people there that talked about the Mothman experience and all of that. And so that actually struck a nerve with me and struck a chord of just historically how that has actually occurred over the years. And it's not like it doesn't happen often, but when it does, there is usually a huge tragedy that happens, where lots of lives are lost, and people in the area would see this Mothman-like creature before it actually happened. That was fascinating. So that struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
And then I guess there are some stories even out of Tennessee, where a Bigfoot-like creature, I want to say it's like a swamp kind of creature. I got the book. I bought the book. I've got it around here somewhere. I don't know I haven't read it yet, but I bought it. I bought it because it was fascinating, because it was a story out of here, out of Tennessee. But anyway, that's what struck a chord with me.
Okay. Yeah. The Mothman stuff is extremely interesting. I think what you're referring to, like the Silver Bridge collapse in 1967,
Yes.
and how people thought it was a harbinger of a lot of different of that event. And that book's based off a book by the movie. I'm sorry, is based off a book by John Keel, which it's if you read the book, it's some of the weirdest stuff you could ever possibly imagine, because there was a lot more going on than just the Mothman. There were like
right.
UFO sightings. There were like Men in Black sightings, which were just completely bizarre. There was this guy that said that he contacted this character named Indrid Cold, which is, which Richard Haddam introduces in that in the Mothman Prophecies film. And some of the stuff with Bigfoot like gets really, really weird. I don't know if you've listened to some of the episodes that we've done, but it's definitely on the there's a lot of stuff that's definitely on the weird side. Is there anything that like your personal, like, do you have any personal stories for like paranormal stories?
Okay, truth, I don't, and I'm going to tell you, I honestly, now I believe in the paranormal. Sure. I believe, I believe in God. Also, I don't know what y'all's spiritual life is like, but for me, I do believe in God. But I also believe in the paranormal, and I also believe that those who are seeking will find it. And I think it would freak me out so much that you would have to institutionalize me. So therefore, I don't want to see it. I don't want to be, you know what I mean? I know it's there, but just it needs to stay there. I don't want. Yeah, I would flip out. But I do know. I have yet another friend. I've seen video. They have like pet cams in their house, and they had a son/brother, pass away unexpectedly, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And on that pet cam, there is this little orb that seems to follow what would be, we think it's him, that would be his sister, just follows her around the house. I mean, and there's no light that we can see with our own eyes, but on that pet cam, you can see it. It is the craziest thing. And I believe it's just as real as, my hair color, which is very real. I am a redhead. So those sorts of things. Phil Valentine tells the story of, they have an old cabin on their property, and at night they actually can hear fiddle music playing, and they don't have anything going. And Phil will talk about sometimes smelling a perfume, and they think there's something that lives in that cabin. But I don't have my own personal experiences. Like I said, I think I would freak out way too much if I were to witness something with my own two eyes. I really do. I think you'd have to institutionalize me.
It's interesting because I really know a lot about this stuff, but I think if I had an experience like that, I might freak out too. Because honestly, I don't really know how I would react to something like that. Because I related on one of the last episodes, but when I was a child, I had an experience that was really strange. I saw this old lady in a corner in the house, and I've told this a billion times on this show, but my aunt had lived in with my father moved into the same house that he lived in as a child. So I grew up in the same house as my father, and I saw an old lady standing in the corner. And kind of to make the long story short on this, later on, I was probably about 7, and later on, when I was about 14, my mom and my aunt were speaking to each other about this house. This is actually in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I'm from. And they were talking about it, and my aunt said, well, I looked into your father and uncle's room, which later, 30 years later, was going to be was my room, and I saw an old lady in the corner. So it's very much like this kind of like validation of her experience and my experience, were like this validation that like something actually happened. I can remember seeing or like feeling things in that house. Never anything like was like that felt like kind of like malevolent or anything. It all kind of felt kind of peaceful, but there was definitely like this weird presence in that house. And I can remember actually moving away to the house where my parents are now and not feeling that same way. Like it just had a different, like that house had a totally different feeling. And I can remember like voices over my head when I was probably like 4 years old and not wanting to wake up. My mom had a weird experience where she saw a little boy in the house, and there was just, just several little things like that, that happened to me. But as an adult, nothing. I haven't had a single thing.
Probably as a child, you had more of an open mind to it. Yeah. You didn't have all these fear barriers and that sort of thing that keep us from seeing things like that.
Yeah, and kids will say some interesting stuff that makes you really wonder about kind of like the nature of reality and all that. So. Yeah.
And you kind of know the difference of whether they're just pulling it out of there, or if they really do believe they're saying something. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard some weird stuff, and I think I've heard some things that my mom has told me that I said, and I'm just like, really? What about anybody in your family? Has anyone in your family ever had any kind of weird experiences or encounters like that?
I don't really know. I don't recall talking about seeing things like that. We're very religious kind of family, so I don't recall any crazy stories at all. And if they did have any crazy stories, they certainly weren't sharing them.
Sure.
So no.
Yeah, you got to wonder about that too, whether people are kind of reticent to say something about the paranormal too, or whether they'll think that like people will think that they're weird. I've noticed that that's kind of changing lately, though.
I think it is kind of changing, but that was kind of the thing with my friend who believes she saw not necessarily Bigfoot, but something that's Bigfoot-like.
Yeah.
She was reluctant to tell me her story because she thought that I would think she was crazy. And I did, at first I thought, well, they had a lot of mimosas that morning or Bloody Marys or something. And no, I mean, they didn't, but that was my only thing. And it's so funny because walking around the CryptidCon, whatever it was called.
Yeah. CryptidCon.
Walking around the Bigfoot convention is what I called it. People would ask me, are you a believer? Are you a believer? And I would just say, well, I believe her. And I'd point to my friend. I do. I believe she saw something. I think people, like you just said, I just think people are probably reluctant into saying anything. They don't want to be labeled nuts.
It's interesting that they use that terminology of like, are you a believer? They're not sitting there saying like, well, what do you think is going on? Or do you think there's something going on? It's like, are you a believer? There's almost like I've noticed this in paranormal conventions. We just went to a UFO convention in Knoxville over the weekend, and my co-host here, Raphael, he'd never been to one before, and he almost had that feeling like there was this like religious, almost kind of like church-like atmosphere to it. Like it was like a replacement almost.
I just turned to Adam and I was like, man, this feels like church. I could just feel the belief.
Yeah. Do you got any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I didn't know you had a co-host in there. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He's here.
I got producer duties, I'm just make sure everything's running right.
Yeah, he's the co-host / producer now. We used to have our own producer, but we don't know what happened to him. We think he fell off the flat Earth or something. But yeah.
Or he saw something and just never came back.
Yeah.
Nope, too much for me. I'm freaking out.
Yeah, he got taken by the aliens. Do you have any thoughts on like UFOs and stuff?
Well, like what?
UFOs, like flying saucers, aliens.
You said, do I have any thoughts? Like what kind of thoughts?
Are like the nature of it, or what it could be?
The nature of it. So, do I believe in UFOs? Is that what you're asking? Unidentified flying objects.
Sure.
I mean, why not? There are certainly objects in the sky that I can't identify, and I'm sure there are plenty of objects up there that scientists have yet to identify. Do I think it's another species, that's more advanced than human beings that are trying to make contact with us? I don't know. I mean, I'm not so grandiose that I think that only human beings exist.
Okay.
If I'm a believer in God, which I am, why would God, who is infinite, only focus on just this little teeny speck in this grand universe? So, I mean, I would think that, the God of this grand universe would have a whole lot of things to play with, I guess would be the way to say it, so sure. Do I think there might be aliens? Sure. Or other kinds of life? Sure. Do I think we'll ever see them or know them? Probably not in my lifetime, at least lifetime in this physical body of mine. I think my energy, of course, will continue on.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's anything sitting at Area 51 that we're studying that one day will make contact with us. What is it? What's the Star Trek First Contact?
Right,
I don't know
right.
that's going to happen in my lifetime, but do I believe there are things out there? Absolutely. I think it's a great, gigantic, big world, and we're just a little speck.
What do you think people are seeing when they say that they see craft or lights or things like that? Do you think it's some kind of maybe just military, or you think there's maybe some kind of spiritual aspect to it?
I think it could be both. Mm-hmm. The truth is, I bet you when people say that they see things like that, they are seeing military experiments and military craft. I've dated enough people in the military to know there are all kinds of experiments going on that we'll never know, that cost billions of dollars, that we throw away more than you realize. I mean, I'm aware of down in Huntsville, this friend of mine was a G-13, a G-12, something like that, and worked on one of the missile programs, non-line of sight missile program, ended up not working, and it was a $4 billion program, and they had to scrap it because it didn't work.
Don't you love that?
Things like that. So but I think probably a lot of what people are seeing are probably military tests and whatnot.
I agree. Yeah.
That's what I think. Yeah.
We're pretty on the same page for a lot of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the UFO sightings, and I think some of this stuff about aliens, and I think a lot of it's been like kind of disinformation, especially I think during the Cold War, to kind of keep different like kind of
secret projects,
secret aircraft, secret projects, secret.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And to kind of obscure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, kind of let's get to talking about the talk radio industry that you're in, and podcasting and all that. What do you see? Is there a change going on in talk radio because of podcasting? What's kind of like the relationship between that now?
A change. So, I mean, podcasting's been going on now for a very long time, probably longer than you realize.
Yeah.
I just think that the audience for them has grown. And that's why suddenly, and I don't mean this to you guys, I mean, I was going to say suddenly everybody and their brother is doing a podcast. And I don't mean that
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
insulting to you guys at all, and I have no idea how many people listen to yours, or, you were just a nice person that wanted me to come on, so why not? Talk radio, radio itself is a medium that I don't think's going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think we lose out because of the podcast. There are just too dang many podcasts. You have to have something really unique if it's going to compete, if you will, with radio. The other thing that is unique about radio that podcasts are not is that we're still live. Now there are radio shows and music shows that aren't necessarily live at that moment, meaning the DJ has pre-recorded all of their tracks and they're sitting at home when their show's on or whatever. Mm-hmm. Talk radio, in a lot of cases, is still live. It might be syndicated, but it's still live.
Right.
And then the great thing about WTN is that we are live and local throughout most of the day. Now, here's why I say all of this. Since you're talking conspiracies and aliens and this, that, and the other, mm-hmm. when there is an emergency, if your cell tower goes down, if you don't have your cell phone to get your emergency information, when your power is out, your Wi-Fi is gone, your television is gone. What do you still have? If people will put batteries in an actual radio, you still have your radio.
Yeah,
and if
right.
You young millennials will remember that just buy they're $10 at this point. Get yourself a $10 radio, have it in your house, put batteries in it, and you're set.
I thank you for calling me a millennial. I'm actually older, but
oh, good. Well, congratulations.
But thank you.
I have no idea. But people equate podcasts with millennials. I mean, let's just be. These days, they do. Now, again, I've been on podcasts 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that people were just maybe not 20, I'll take that back, but the 15 certainly.
I'd say 15 is a good safe bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about the same time I started listening to at the time what were referred to as internet radio shows. So yeah, 15 years is a good number.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I've been in emergency situations. I was in Illinois when a tornado ripped through that town, and it took down other radio station towers. We were the only one left up. So everybody in this particular town in that area, they were listening to us. I mean, I even remember being in my neighborhood. And mind you, I was doing reports from my phone until the cell tower went out, but I was doing reports on my porch from my phone until I had to go down in the basement. But then later that evening, when nobody has power, you don't even hear a hum of electricity going through the town because there is none. People were going out to their cars to listen to the radio. So, why does this movie come to my mind right now? What is it? Signs? They're down in the basement, and so they're listening to the radio to see what's going on, kind of stuff. That's the thing about radio, and people don't remember that until something happens. 9/11, when that happened, all radio turned into talk radio for at least a day. When there is an emergency and your cable's out, like I said, the cell towers, if it's not down, so many people are trying to call people, you can't get a call through because it's too jammed. So what do? You go to your radio. So I don't think radio is taking a hit, if that was your original question. I don't think it's taking a hit from podcasts. I think it's all enhancing. So there are people, even now in radio that are doing podcasts as well, where they're taking segments of their show that they did on the radio and podcasting it for people to listen to. My fascination is, though, with so many out there, how do you pick one to listen to? That's my fascination. Who stands up out of the crowd?
That's a good question.
hundreds of thousands of podcasts, and that's what it is at this point.
Right, and that's something we deal with a lot. We've been around for 7 years, and
oh wow, congratulations!
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, we've been around for a good little while, and I think right now, I think the figure is, was it 60% of podcasts never get past episode 7? So those
oh
of
wow,
those
so
of
you've
us,
got 7 years.
Yeah. This is we just finished recording episode 276, so
Congratulations.
We've been around a while, yeah, and thank you, and it's been, it's really. I really think it's just like we're in our own little niche, and we get a lot of people that are interested, but we really do kind of put ourselves out there with the other podcasts that are popular.
A lot of networking.
And, yeah, we've been doing a lot of networking and a lot of swap casting, and I think being one of those that have been around since 2012.
Wait, you just gave me a new word I'd never heard of.
Swap casting.
What?
Swap casting.
What is that?
It's where you're on somebody else's podcast, they're on yours, and you post them at the same time. So we just did one
podcasting.
Yeah, we just did one with another podcast called Strange Familiars, which is fairly popular now. And a lot of the reason why they're popular is because they were mentioned on this podcast called Last Podcast on the Left, which is one of the most famous podcasts that is out there. So they're really famous, and this guy's a big fan of our show, and so we just did like this little swap cast thing, and
nice.
that's becoming like a little bit of a trend. And I think it makes you visible to their audience and them visible to your audience, and there's a good, I think, a good give and take. But to address kind of like the radio thing, I still think radio still has that power. I don't think that it's going away. And I know people that I know another podcast that he's really popular from just the point of view that he is on the radio in upstate New York. It's not a very strong station, but I still think he's able to get better guests because they see the radio aspect, and there's Coast to Coast. It's out there. That's the biggest show ever, national radio.
Sure.
So I don't see like talk radio or anything like that going away. And that's what really, being someone that's in that industry, I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah. And from a talk radio standpoint, I agree with you. Now, from a music radio standpoint, I think things have just changed. I mean, I've been doing this for a really, really long time. And so what I've noticed on the music radio side is that, things have become very generic unless, you're on in the mornings. Morning shows are more personality driven, or your drive time shows are personality driven. But for the most part, shows are kind of generic. And for me, the music is kind of generic. I find some of the better music these days not on the radio anymore, and that's unfortunate.
That's true,
because there's so much great music out there, and I don't just mean country. I mean in all formats that you can find. The cool thing is these days you don't have to have deal or have your music played on the radio for it to do well anymore, and that's what I find kind of interesting. It just seems very corporate formatted these days for me. But again, I don't know that the radio audiences aren't programming to me right now. From a music standpoint, I'm not the audience they're looking for, so they don't have to program something that I might like, because I'm a little older, and I skew a little older than what their demo might be. So I don't know that it matters from my standpoint. But anyway, that's kind of how I see it.
I think one of the strengths of radio too is that it still has that local component, really, and it ties you to the area.
Yep. Yeah, I just agree with that. Well, Pamela, thank you so much. I know that you kind of limited to 30 minutes, so I want to thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Where can people find your presence on the radio?
Well, on the radio, 99.7 FM in Nashville. We stream, of course, 99.7WTN.com.
Yep.
You can find us on a phone app, iHeartRadio. You can find us there. You can find me on Facebook. It's Furr with 2 R's, F-U-R-R, Pamela Furr. Now, the only thing, here's the deal, and I don't know that I've made this clear to you, but me being on this podcast means you cannot tell people what I look like when I answer the door.
That's not a problem. That's not a problem. The secret is safe with me.
Excellent.
All right, Pamela.
Sometimes it's the PJs and the.
Oh yeah, okay. I gotcha. All right, well, stay on the line for us just for a little bit. We're gonna close out this bonus episode. Want to thank everybody for listening to Conspirinormal.
If you would like to help the show, please consider becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/Conspirinormal or leave a one-time donation at Conspirinormal.com. And please check out our YouTube channel